everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I love to death talking about new cards, especially to new players. And we have a fantastic episode coming up for you today. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. So this is what we call, or what we are going to be calling, New Player February. So for anybody who knows, we usually put a pause on our normal content to bring you an extravaganza month in February. In the past, we have brought you months like Sylvan February, Couples February, where we focused on couples in and around the game, and last year we did Superlatives, the best and worst in the game. And
David, you sound like an infomercial. Like, we're the production company that brought you such hits as Couples February. Like,
right.
One of those, like, hey, you seen this?
Yeah. Right. And so I think it would be almost a shame if, as one of the podcasts in the community, if we didn't focus on the latest review, on the latest release surrounding our game, and that's the revised core set. So this month we are focusing solely on new players, New Player February. That doesn't mean that veterans will not get anything out of this month, but we're going to focus on the re-released revised core set. But we're also going to use this month for something a little bit different, and we're going to be a little more out there with this, as this month being where we're asking for your support from the community, right? If you like what Card Talk does or what we have to offer, subscribe to our YouTube channel, comment on the show, make comments, talk about things you like, talk about things you don't like, interact with us. We definitely want to hear what you have to say. Other things that you can do is subscribe to our audio channel, become, and rate and review us. What that does is that helps push this podcast a little further up so that new people to the community can see this resource out there. So, rate and review what we have. We have a blog. You can check out our blog. I'll put the link right down here over Ted's head. And that's cardtalk2018.com. And you can follow us there. There's a button that allows you to follow us there. And Matt is our blog master, and he's pumping out articles just as quickly as we're putting out podcast episodes. So please follow us over at the blog. And lastly, normally we would spend this time thanking our patrons, but if you've listened to Card Talk, or if this is the first episode of Card Talk you're listening to, consider supporting what we do here via Patreon. That address will pop up right down here, again, over Ted's head. And it's basically, that's the best way for you to say how much you appreciate what we're doing here in the community. Helps keep the lights on at the podcast, helps keep the hosting costs over at the blog in check. And if that's not enough, we do offer swag for everybody every year. And so everybody gets a little something, no matter what level you contribute at. But we have big swag that goes out to everybody who is at the $5 level and up. And that is and you have to be an active Patreon between April and when Con of the Rings happens in October, which is kind of the community big live event that happens. But having said that, that was a really long intro to get at, here we are, we're Card Talk. There's three of us that do the podcast. There's one that does there's one of us that does the blog. And, we want to talk a little bit about what Card Talk is. Maybe how it came to be, what the thoughts are behind Card Talk, and then we also want to talk about what is LOTR LCG, what is Lord of the Rings: The Living Card Game. And so what I'll do is I'll I'll start with the second one. I mean, it's always good to lead with that. So, Lord of the Rings: Living Card Game is a card game by Fantasy Flight Games where you are playing some heroes.
Interactive, immersive.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to think about all the stuff that LOTR LCG isn't or is. But
I can think of a few things that it's not.
I can definitely think of a few things that it's not. But as you get started in your...
Yeah, it's not Marvel Champions.
It's definitely not Marvel Champions. It's definitely not Arkham Horror. It's not Legends of the Five Rings. But I think that this game does as good as any other game to represent Tolkien's world in a card game format. I think that, when you think about the super well represented games, not just card games, but games that do that represent Tolkien's world, some are done not very well, and some are done really well. And this is one that's done really well out there. So
yeah, that's a good point, David. Of all the video games, board games, all the products that are sort of take place in Middle Earth, I really feel that this product does the best job at taking you through a Middle Earth adventure. Right? Like you choosing your team of heroes, the characters that you are familiar with and ones you're getting to be familiar with and learning about, and going through a quest, and it's truly something epic from start to finish, and gives you really just comprehensive experience from start to finish. I think it does it more than any other product on the market.
Absolutely.
It definitely has the Middle Earth. It definitely has the Middle Earth feel. You can see Middle Earth through the descriptions on the narrative text as well as on each of the quests. And you can see the love that they've put into it from the love of Middle Earth. They're bringing Tolkien's world to the card game, and it works. There's been so many attempts to reinvent and alter, but you can see that they haven't with this. They've taken his words from paper and tried to design this game successfully around it.
And I think that I'll piggyback off of what you just said, Grant, because I think that one of the reasons why people are drawn to this game is because of the artwork. Whenever you think of fantasy artwork, some people don't necessarily think of high quality, art that's not scantily clad women and big beefy barbarians, right? The art in this game is classy and dignified, and the game is reflective of how complex Tolkien's world is by having a set of rules and a game that is very involved, and I love that aspect. More specifically, this game takes place in the 17 years that passes between the time that between the time of Bilbo's party and the time where Gandalf sent Frodo on his journey to destroy the One Ring in the Shire. And so that's the timeline you're talking about. So this is world building around all of the things that are happening in Middle Earth at that time. And I think that that's a phenomenal chunk of time to really dig into. And I think the game does a really good job at focusing in on specific events that could have been happening at that time. So, I mean, it would be weird for me to say that that I love this game because I do. I mean, I love it so much that I began the podcast. So, and which I guess brings us to our second point,
Which is
which is what is this podcast about, right?
welcome to Card Talk.
Yeah, welcome to Card Talk, right? And
You mean our first point, David, not the second point, because we'll just cover the second point first.
right. Well, we have to do this in some sort of order, but Card Talk is a weekly, most of the times weekly podcast where we take a specific card in the game and we discuss it. It's like a deep dive into one card in the game. And typically we talk about player cards, and typically we only talk about official content that comes from FFG. Every once in a while we branch off, but for the most part we stay true to that. We do have a blog that acts as our housing space for all the episodes that we've done, and written reviews and places to interact with us. But I think as the guy whose idea it was to start, I'll just say that what I really wanted was a video show that showed me the cards, because at an audio podcast it's hard to visualize artwork, and as you're trying to build a deck and you're trying to remember what a card is, it's a little bit more challenging when you're just hearing it. So the inspiration for this came from having an audio show or having a video show to display the cards and the artwork, and the other thing was to just inspire deck building. And that's really what I wanted to do, deck building and playing the game. And so, Grant, what's your view and what's your take on what Card Talk does?
Well, for me, obviously, I joined David right at the beginning. Officially, I was meant to just be behind the scenes, giving them some lore about the many facets of Middle-earth. But as things turned out, I ended up becoming one of the hosts. And for me, it was more about giving back some of the knowledge that I'd learned, more than just getting people to build decks or anything like that. It was more about teaching them about the world that I myself am immersed in, the history, the lore, the mythology. All of it is very well maintained and well written by Tolkien. There are so many publications of his works throughout the whole life and breadth of Middle-earth that I think people don't realize just how significant it all is. And for me, it was giving that bit back, but also getting new players to enjoy the game, because it's all right for me to say it's a good game, go play it. But once you can actually state why these cards do what they do, or the history behind them, I think it gets more players involved. They can say, all right, okay, I see why that's that like that. So that's what I think it is for me anyway.
And Ted?
Yeah, Grant he makes a lot of good points. A lot of mine align with that. And when I was invited to join the show, I wanted to just share some of my experiences and talk about ways to use cards. I love talking about cards, so I want to inspire people to build decks, to play cards they haven't played. It spawns all kinds of new, because once you talk to someone and start bouncing around ideas and start playing some more, all these new ideas start popping into my head, and I want to do the same thing for other players and just get them thinking about cards in a different perspective, so they can have experience the same journey but in a new way with new player cards. And um, with this game too, I played it since the beginning. I was in there when the core set came out. That's when I jumped into the game. And things to me have always just like, I was there as the game progressed. So you soak up that knowledge as it comes out. As cards come out, I absorb the knowledge, I play with them. And something I didn't understand until I tried to join a new card game where I wasn't in the ground floor, I didn't realize how easy it is to get lost. Like, the game itself is very big. And so I if you jump into another game, like I played Arkham Horror LCG when it launched, and then I took a break, and then I sort of got back into it, picked up some new cards. But in that gap, I didn't realize how much I missed. And then I'm looking up all these decks online, and I'm trying to figure out like what card people are talking about to include with what investigator. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize how easy it is to get lost in a game like this. And Lord of the Rings the same way. You have all these heroes and 4 different spheres, and then there's these new card types that come out, side quest contract, all these different things that come out from the core set that expand the game. And Card Talk is here to help guide the players through that. Direct players where to start, try to get them thinking about ideas, and that's what we do. We just bounce it off of each other. It's great. We hope it helps.
Another thing that I think that we at Card Talk do that we kind of pride ourselves on is I think we like to have guests on the show, because I am not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, Grant and I, before Ted came along, probably recorded a couple of shows at least where we screwed up rules and people would tell us about, I still have agita thinking about the Tactics Bilbo episode that we recorded that we got like everything wrong on, and so I think it's one of the things that I am proud of for this show is that we have guests come on the show, not just Caleb Grace, the designer of the game, and not just Jeremy Zwern, designer of the game, and not just other creators in the community, but we've had just regular players on the show. Christian Prisholm came on the show, and Matt Duckworth is on the show. Just people that love the game. And so I think that that's another thing that I am proud to have brought to the community as a platform for players to talk about cards that they love too. And that's one of the reasons why I appreciate the blog as well, because that gives people who want to write for the community a place to do it. That's what we're doing here, is reviewing cards, and it's just a really good outlet for people to do that. We always want to be kind of in tune and in touch with the community. So, and I will be the first to say that I am no expert. I am becoming better at a lot of this stuff, but I don't ask as many rules questions, but it's a complicated game, and that's one of the reasons why I love it, is because there's a lot of decision points. And so to bring other people in to what we have done, that's great to hear what other perspectives are about certain cards, because there's so many decision points. So, the other thing that I will say about Lord of the Rings, the living card game, is that it's a game of incremental progress. Okay, and so to wrap this up, just like
both like physically in the game, but like at levels of meta.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly what I was getting at, is that it's incremental progress in the game. I would say that there's very few cards in the game that are game enders on a player side. You know, a lot of the things that you get in the game are, you know, draw one card, draw two cards. There's never draw 28 cards. You know, there's, you know, do one damage, do two damage maybe. You know, there's cards that give you +1 attack, and you know, there's +1 defense. It's a game of incremental, you know, slow progress. But like Ted said, in the meta as well, you know, it's about making incremental and slow progress. Card Talk is slowly reviewing the whole card pool. You know, will we ever get there? I would love to say that we would. I don't know, but you know, we're slowly getting through the whole thing. You know, and you as a player, you're going to make slow progress. You know, understanding the rules and understanding the subtle interactions. But the more you play, the more that you enjoy it, the more that the game will open unto you, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's a great point, David. So we're here to help clarify rules around cards too, as much as we know, and we're not immune to to making mistakes ourselves, as David had mentioned. But now that for players just getting into the game, there are some new products coming out, but those products thus far are just reprints, repackaging of the content that already exists. The way the game is set now, we're pretty much at the end of it, or it's on a hiatus. We don't know the status of it other than this sort of repackaged product coming out. So we have the benefit, at least, of a lot of play experience, and we've collected a lot of information from FAQs and other players around the community, other FFG employees, and you know, there's other resources that we've used to collect these rules, and that's also something we want to share, so that way people are playing correctly and they're having fun while doing so.
That's right. So what we'll do is we'll just finish this episode with one last time around the table, and you guys, you can maybe you can talk a little bit about, you know, how special LOTR is, or how special Card Talk is, and then wrap it up. So Ted, you were the latest to join us, although you've been part of the crew for 3 years. What's your last gasp here?
Well, I just gave my spiel, but yeah, it's we want to, yeah, we're just players ourselves, and David started this podcast because he just had a passion for the game, and so do I, and so does Grant, and so does Matt, and we just want to share that with people, and it's why board gaming collectively is just my favorite hobby, because you just meet, you know, folk like yourself, right, that connect in your shared interests. So we just want to share that with everybody, and hopefully with this, Card Talk as a whole is really looking forward to 2022. I think we got some great things in the works, starting with this spectacular extravaganza that we're launching. So I'm really excited to be a part of the crew and what we have coming for, again, both new and veteran players.
Grant, what's your last gasp here?
Well, even if it's just to say, give it a try. It's always worth even looking at some of the content available to see if the game is right for you. Have a look at some playthroughs, have a listen to some of our other podcasts, and see if this is a game that you could get into. Now, if you're listening to this, I hope you've already decided to purchase and play. If not, I hope this decides to get you interested in it. It's a good game. It's cooperative as well as solo play, so you can play with friends or you can play on your own. The difficulty does get incrementally harder as you add more players. Some quests are easier, some quests are harder, depending on the number of players. But generally speaking, 2 to 3 players is a nice balance. Adding a 4th player can be a little bit tricky. But it's always a good laugh, even if you get the rules wrong. I mean, take a look at the number of quests that are posted on the Card Talk channel and scroll through the comments. You missed X, Y, and Z. You need to go and replay this. Right, okay. But it's always a good laugh.
And I'll wrap up with one of my favorite movies that's not Lord of the Rings. Is there's a scene at the very end of a movie called The Shawshank Redemption, and it's about two prisoners that were really good friends in prison, and one was Andy Dufresne and one was named Red, and so Andy got out of prison. He was released. He escaped, and he told his friend Red that there was a note for him, somewhere out in the Maine cornfield somewhere. And so when Red gets out, he said, "You go find it. We'll go from there." But the point is on that note that's burned into my head, that said, "Red, you've come this far. Maybe you'll want to come a little farther." And so that's really what I think about Lord of the Rings, is that, you've started on this journey and maybe you'll want to keep going a little farther. And hopefully we can help you keep going a little further, keep going a little farther and not get frustrated on that journey, so that you eventually will get to the very end of whatever journey you have going on with Lord of the Rings, the living card game. So with that ends our introductory episode of New Player February. And again, we are thankful that you are here with us, and we can't wait to continually bring really good content. We'll see you again very, very soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.